So oftentimes when I talk to people about decision making, like I said, many people haven't been taught a process. So I'll ask them, how do you make decisions? And often the answer is, I just do. I do it. I have choices and then I decide. And so what I would offer is a way to break even the biggest decisions up into more manageable parts. And what I want to share is actually the framework that Professor Ron Howard would teach in the Intro to Decision Analysis course at Stanford. So every single decision has three components, and it could be big decision, small decision, individual or group, personal or professional. It will always have these three components.
Welcome to Tradition Breakers. I'm Mary Moses, former corporate executive turned creative entrepreneur, and each episode I bring you an inspiring person or message to help more of us in the AAPI community break free from restrictive traditions that are preventing us from going after the life that we truly desire. Let's dive in. You're running ads, you're sending emails, you're working with influencers, you're doing everything you're supposed to do, but the conversions still aren't there. Here's the truth. Your problem isn't marketing, it's the lack of someone leading it. I'm Mary, fractional CMO for multi-unit restaurants, cafes, spas, and clinics. I helped scale a national restaurant brand past 30 locations, launched in major cities like LA, New York, and San Francisco, and grew loyalty programs to over 500,000 members. A growing brand like yours doesn't need the overhead of a full-time CMO. But what you do need is a leader making sure your marketing is actually growing your business. If you're tired of fragmented marketing that leads to inconsistent and poor results, let's talk so we can change that. Visit tastydirectives.com/contact to schedule a call. That's tastydirectives.com/contact. Can't wait to talk to you. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Tradition Breakers. I'm here with our special guest that I'm super excited to interview because of her very unique training. And I've never heard of anyone like Michelle before. So she's a fellow Filipino American, awesome, mom of two, and a Stanford-trained decision engineer. Never heard of a decision engineer before. And if you're anything like me, who sometimes struggles with making decisions, I can be sometimes the most indecisive person. Michelle is going to be a great person to learn from and to listen to today, which is why I had to get her on the podcast. She coaches executives and leaders on how to make decisions with less stress and more clarity. Over the past decade, she has spoken to audiences around the globe and has coached hundreds of leaders across tech, healthcare, and financial services, from pre IPO startups to Fortune 500 companies. She's been an adjunct lecturer at Stanford, is a faculty coach for Berkeley Executive Coaching Institute, and hosts the podcast Ask a Decision Engineer. Michelle, welcome. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. So let's just get right into it. I already said you're a Stanford-trained decision engineer and executive coach. Can you share the personal and professional journey that led you to where you are today? Because you didn't start out as a uh, decision engineer. You started out as a consultant.
Yeah. And actually, I'm excited to be on the show, especially this concept of tradition breakers, because I feel like the journey to get to do what I do today has been a lot of unlearning some of the things that I had learned early on just from my parents. And so I don't know if this is true for you, but growing up, both of my parents are immigrants from the Philippines,
Mhm.
came to America, have a better life for their kids. And so when I was growing up, one of the things that was drilled into me, especially by my dad, was the formula for success is to study hard in school, go to college, and get a good job. For those of you who are listening to this podcast, I'm putting good job in little finger air quotes. And so that's what I was told like every single year when I was growing up. And so I was like, okay, let me do those things. Let me study hard in school. Let me go to college. I went to Stanford, as you mentioned.
Hmm.
And then I went and got a good job. So, yes, I studied decision engineering. It just so happened, actually, this is kind of a funny story. Heading into Stanford, I knew I wanted to be an engineer. I was good at math and science, and it seemed like an acceptable major,
It
right?
was, yes. It
Um,
still is.
like, oh, I was not going to be a doctor or a lawyer, but engineer, okay.
You're
That's
safe.
okay. Still safe, right? And I remember I was trying to figure out what type of engineer I wanted to be. And it just so happened that the Filipino American Club at Stanford was doing local outreach to high
Mm,
schools. So I lived half an hour away from Stanford. So I found out about their events. And the founder of the Filipino American Student Union at Stanford was an industrial engineer. And I asked him, "What is that? I've never heard
yeah.
of that before." And he said, "Oh, it's the engineering of efficiency." I was like, "Ooh, that sounds cool."
Didn't know that.
I
Okay.
know, right? Yeah, like all these things that I was learning at the time because, I grew up with, "Do you wanna be a doctor? Do you wanna be a lawyer?"
Hmm.
I like math and science. I'm gonna be an engineer. So I go into Stanford. I want to major in industrial engineering, but they do this massive, I guess, like reorg or rearrangement of major rearrangement, renaming. Industrial engineering was combined with a couple of different other things to create the Department of Management Science. And there was a track called Finance and Decision Engineering. And basically, everyone in that major was going into one of two jobs. Either if you like the finance side of things, they were going into investment banking. And I said, no, thank you. I like sleep and I don't want to move far away from home to New York. And then everyone else was going to consulting. So that's how I ended up in consulting after
Hmm.
school. So I did the study hard, go to school, get a good job, in air quotes.
Yes.
And then within 2 years, I knew that like that wasn't where I wanted to stay.
What was it
So
about that job where you were like, not for me?
I think there was a couple different things. I mean, I learned a ton. If I had to do it again, I would have started my career there again. But
Mm,
I like being able to see the full picture of things. As a
mm,
consultant, you only get like a very narrow scope. I
ah,
like to be able to see the results of my work, and as a consultant, you often deliver a recommendation and may
right.
not get to see everything that happens afterwards. Sometimes they may not even, like,
Right.
take your recommendation. They're just like, "Thanks, and we're gonna do some other thing." I wanted to see the bigger picture. I wanted to be embedded within an organization. From there, I went into more of a general management, brand management role within consumer products, which was super fun. So fun that I wanted to continue down that path, but they told me, "Oh, if you wanna get promoted beyond one level above where you are, you have to get your MBA." So that's why I went
Mm,
and applied to business schools, and it was within business school that I was reconnected to my passion for education. Before I wanted to be an engineer, all I wanted to be was a teacher. Like, I loved being able to
mm,
help people get from point A to point B, or help people develop the skills that they needed to be on the path that they wanted to be on. And so business school was really formative in starting to, like, put me back on this path of wanting to help people develop, seeing kind of the big picture with folks. And about 12 years ago is when I started coaching, and I've been coaching full time ever since.
wow. I love the story because you going to business school reminded you of what you wanted to do, right?
Mhm.
Which was teaching, or for me, it sounds like guiding. You love to guide and support people into making
Yeah,
those
like to
decisions.
guide and help. And the question was, well, what does that look like given the skill set that I've already developed?
Yes. Yeah. I love that. So, how did you apply what you learned as a consultant to being a coach? And how was that transition like for you? Did you just flat out quit and say, I'm going to do this instead? Walk me through that.
So I was first introduced to coaching, and I was actually trained as a coach while I was in business school. I was trained as a
Okay.
leadership communications coach as I was picking up gigs, trying to figure out how I was gonna pay for business
Right.
school, right?
It's not free. Just
And I still remember 2 weeks before graduating, 'cause I was on this, "Ooh, maybe I wanna work in education" path. 2 weeks before graduation, one of my mentors who had helped train me as a coach said, "So why have you never thought of coaching as a profession, like, for yourself?" And I told them I didn't know it was a thing. Again,
Mm,
remember, like, early on, I just knew that doctor, lawyer, maybe engineer path, right? And then I
yeah,
arrived in, like, college and learned about all these other things. Oh, investment banking, consulting, and then in business school, coaching. That's a
coaching.
thing? Oh, wow, interesting. So it took me a few years to explore what that path would look like. Like, is there a demand for what I could bring to the table
Yeah,
as a coach? Did some testing to where I went to business school, Berkeley Haas is a very entrepreneurial school. And so there's a lot of just embedded, okay, what does it look like to, at the very beginning, if you're starting a business, how is it
yeah,
that you test the market, figure out product market fit, figure out your positioning, figure out like set up stage gates so that you can check on whether it's worth it to pivot or persevere. So there was a lot of
right.
that before I actually went into it full time.
So did you get someone to coach as more of a, I guess, experiment or like a mentorship? How did you do it?
Like the first client go like
Yeah, the
how did I
first
go from
client.
0 to
Yeah, like
1?
how did you get your first client?
Yeah. I think first I was testing positioning.
Mm-hmm.
Would people want to seek my guidance in something?
Right.
And for me, I actually started out as a career coach because, again, remember that whole journey where I did everything that I was supposed to do, and then all of a sudden I realized this is not it. Well, what
Yeah.
do I do now? I got really good at doing the things in the checklist, but didn't know how to decide what to do for myself. And so it took some
Mm.
learning and actually a mentor saying, "Hey, you just studied how to help companies make the best decisions for themselves. Why don't you apply that to yourself?" That's
That
such
is
a
so
great
cool.
idea.
Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, applying it to yourself.
Right. And so that's where I started. I started with a blog, really, just,
Okay.
what were my learnings? Because some of my friends around me who also were in consulting or investment banking or these good, in finger quotey,
Yes.
quotes, jobs, but were unhappy. And so I started blogging some of my insights and sharing some of the things that I learned, shared some of the frameworks that I learned from decision engineering and had applied to myself, and people found it helpful. I think I also did some really like grassroots guerrilla marketing things. I remember I set up a table at farmers market once just to
No
see if
way.
anyone
What happened?
people stopped and asked. I had a little sign. I forget what it said, but I also had my pink typewriter, and I think it was just like a fun thing to see who would engage and how could I share some of the things that I could help people with. But I think my very first client was through my boyfriend at the time, now my husband,
Hmm.
and he's like, "You know what? I need someone with your type of brain to help me with this puzzle. What is your rate?"
Hmm.
Like, I just, like, picked a number out of the sky and went with it. That's when it became really real.
That's so great. And then you just kept doing it. You just kept blogging, I'm assuming, and showing up and
I was testing this idea of being a coach for a couple years before I went out on my own, and even
hmm.
then, I had defined the test, right? The test of
Right.
what
Right.
is it that I was trying to figure out very concretely. It's like, "Okay, I have this much money in the bank and also this much in living expenses. Can I actually make a living? Can I make
Right.
a living doing this?"
And so you were in a situation where you were testing as you were still working a job. And I'm thinking also as you were still in business school, or maybe you just got
Oh,
out of
no.
business school.
I after business school, I got a job in education,
Okay.
and parallel pathing with that was testing this, what does coaching look
Gotcha.
like? And again, it's super interesting to me because this is nothing like anything either of my parents did. Like, my dad
Yeah.
is one of those people who, and I realize this is why that formula for success that he told me worked for him. He got a job, and for my entire lifetime, so he got this job before I was born, he was in the same job until he retired 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So
Yes. It's
there
so
there
different
was no there
nowadays.
was no reevaluation, there was no, "Oh, if I wanna do something new, how do I navigate towards that?" There was no, like, "Oh, how do I test different ideas? How do I pitch myself and my skills?" So all of that was, a steep learning curve for me.
Yes, same with me, because I had a very similar experience as you in college. There were my ideas of what type of career paths I can go into were very limited when I was in high school.
Hmm.
It's the typical like doctor, nurse, like especially in the Filipino community, it's like very medical,
Right.
accountant,
Right. Very
the
stable, safe.
yes, stable and safe. And
To
then I'm
this day,
like,
my dad doesn't understand what I do. But
yeah, same. And so like when I got to college, I started like learning about these different, occupations or career paths. And even after college, I still wasn't really aware of everything else that was out there. So I could totally empathize with your experience. And then with our parents nowadays, the way like the job trajectory goes throughout one's life is completely different now.
Mhm.
It's sort of kind of like out of the norm to meet someone who's only had one job within
Right.
our age range and younger,
Mhm.
right? And you touched on this earlier when we had our previous call about how modern life, today's life, presents far more decision complexity than previous generations, right?
Right.
So, what do you see as the biggest shifts that decision making, like what makes it harder nowadays, is what I'm
Mhm.
saying, than ever before?
Well, I mean, I think the decision environment, like we had talked about in our last conversation, has completely changed since our parents' generation. And
Yeah.
so in our parents' generation, they could choose their career once at the beginning and then just stick with it. But we
Hmm.
now live in a world where entire industries or entire types of job classes are disappearing. Like my father-in-law was a journalist, and that entire line of work has completely changed, at least
Yeah.
in my lifetime. We're also in an age where it not only are jobs that existed before disappearing or rapidly transforming, there are also new types of jobs that are being created,
Yes.
like social media manager. That did not exist
No.
25 years ago when I was in college. It did not. Facebook, I think, was launched right when I was graduating or something like that. And that's
Right.
Facebook, like the dinosaur one,
Yes.
not like all the newer ones. And so, not only are there more decisions to be made over our lifetime, and so oftentimes it's not just like even schooling, right? Back in our parents' generation, they just sent their kids to the school down the street, or at least I went to
Mhm.
public school. So, the neighborhood school. I send my kids to public school, but it's like this whole lottery system and
Yes. Oh my gosh.
preferences and like, and so there are more decisions to be made. There's more options than ever before,
Options.
which, some people would say is a good thing, but it also can be an
Hmm.
overwhelming thing. And
Hmm.
also there's this piece around information. Like with technology, there's this, I would call it like a mirage of, oh, there's so much more information I can have access to. And it makes us feel like we should know so much more with
Right.
certainty. But there's still a lot of uncertainty and a lot of information we may not have or even be able to get. And so I think all of that has increased the complexity around decision making, the stress around decision making, and the fact that I don't know about you, but I haven't met a lot of people who were taught a process for making decisions.
Oh yeah.
And so the gap in education meeting the increased complexity is a recipe for, oh yeah, no wonder decision making feels stressful for a lot of people.
Yeah, it feels very stressful for a lot of people. And I know that our brain isn't meant to take in all the information that's out there right now, right? Like
Mhm.
that causes a lot of anxiety in people. And gosh, even like simple things nowadays can be anxiety ridden, like
And it
what
can
you want
feel
to
high
eat today.
stakes, right? Oh gosh, and we haven't even scratched the surface on how, back in the day, you can make a decision like where you go to school and or what job you have, and just the people who immediately were in your circle
Yes.
or who you would talk to would know.
Yeah.
Now with social media, it almost seems like every single decision, where you go on vacation,
Where you go on
what you
vacation.
purchase, all of these things are so public and so tied to our identity to a
Hmm.
degree that it feels more high stakes in every
Right.
single decision.
Right. Which makes what you do so much more relevant today because I think our world requires us to check in with ourselves a lot more than before because we do have so many options.
Mhm.
So, with that, can you walk me through your framework on decision making? Because I think that's just going to be a game changer for so many people.
Yeah. So oftentimes when I talk to people about decision making, like I said, many people haven't been taught a process. So I'll ask them, how do you make decisions? And often the answer is, I just do. I do it. I have choices and then I decide. And so what I would offer is a way to break even the biggest decisions up into more manageable parts. And what I want to share is actually the framework that Professor Ron Howard would teach in the Intro to Decision Analysis course at Stanford. And I like teaching his framework as opposed to reinventing my own because he's one of the pioneers of that field, decision analysis, and he passed away last year. So this is my way of
Mm,
honoring his legacy.
beautiful.
So every single decision has three components, and it could be big decision, small decision, individual or group, personal or professional. It will always have these three components. So one of these components is objectives. Another way to think about it is values. Basically, what is it that you want in the outcome, right? And the surprising thing is that oftentimes people will skip this step. So classic example, people will go into a pro and con list. But how do you know what makes something a pro versus a con? You have to have some sense of what you care about first, so why not name it?
Right.
So that leg of the three-legged stool is all about just articulating what do you care about in the outcome. One of the things, oh yeah, we are in the midst of this move, and I realized, okay, as we were navigating what the living situation was going to be like with our family, we realized one, we wanted to be able to be closer to support my father-in-law, like that was
Mhm.
important. We also wanted to be able to it be in a place that we could stay long term because, my kids are younger, adaptable, but I realized that moves maybe later on in life would be a harder transition. Like middle school could be harder, high school, we'll see. So we were thinking about what would be a good environment for the kids. And then also, we have a lot of local ties. And so we wanted to be still plugged into the area that we've been in for a while.
Mhm.
And so even naming those things, right, makes it
Yeah.
easier to then tackle the other legs. And so I'll move
Yeah.
on to the next component, which is options. And this is the piece of a decision that most people are already familiar with. You have a decision when you have multiple options to choose from, right? I think sometimes what people forget when it comes to options, though, is that you don't have to just take the obvious ones as the only ones. I see
Mm.
this a lot when I'm coaching folks through offer situations. And so I work as an executive coach, but sometimes my clients will get calls from headhunters and they'll bring these decisions into our sessions. And as they're evaluating the offers, first we'll talk about what is it that they care about, what are the things that
Mhm.
matter in the outcome. And if neither one is hitting on all the points, then we explore, well, what does it look like to go beyond the obvious? Are
Mhm.
there other opportunities out there that you could be looking at? Are there ways that you might negotiate the options that are already in front of you so that you can
Mm.
create new, more creative options that may better meet those objectives that you define?
Right. Right. Breaking through those limited options that are in front of you.
Right. Although I will say sometimes people are in the opposite challenge where they have like infinite options, right? And if it can feel overwhelming, and that's why
Yes.
defining your objectives can be so useful.
Oh, it's so useful because now
So
you're thinking from that perspective.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, and it can be sometimes easier. Another tip I'll put out there is sometimes it can be easier to remove not so great options from the table than to settle on what is the right one. And so if you're ever in a situation where
Mm.
you have a whole lot of options, if you've defined your objectives, just look for like, okay, well, what are the worst ones on the table? I had
Right.
a mentee who was deciding among law schools, Stanford, Yale, and I think Harvard was the other one. Like,
Ooh,
what a choice, right? And
wow,
she
a
was locked.
trifecta.
Right, she was locked up, and I said, "Well, what is your last choice?" And she actually, like, had one. I was like, "Okay, so let's just remove that from the table and focus on your top 2."
Yeah.
Like
Reminds me of the process of elimination.
mhm,
Like, let's start with that.
yeah.
So, outcomes, options, and then what's the third one?
The 3rd one or let's see, the 1st one was objectives, so, like, what is it that you
Objectives.
care about?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's options, and then the 3rd one is information. And so
Okay.
this is specifically what information do you have or not have on how your options, like each of them, delivers against your objectives.
Okay. The information that I have and how it delivers against my
Right.
objectives.
So, for
Gotcha.
example, because there's a lot of information out there, I'll go back to our like moving decision. I remember I was talking to a friend, and she was just like, "Well, are there any really good parks and hiking trails near, one of those locations?" And I said, "I don't know." She's like, "Wouldn't you wanna know?" And I said, "No, because my husband are not and I are not hiking people." Right? And so, again, objectives can be a useful way to identify what is actually relevant information
Mm.
as opposed
Hmm.
to what is noise,
Right.
right? Because there can be a
Yeah.
lot of noise. There can be a lot it's and this is really useful when other people are trying to weigh in on the decision, because oftentimes they're weighing
Hmm.
in at the, like, "You should do this," or "What about this level," right?
Yes. Yes.
But you need that filter of your objectives first to see, "Is this actually relevant information? Is this not? What can I learn from
Right.
this person?"
Because I can see how that can sometimes get confusing. Like
Mhm.
your friend, oh, there's great trails here. And oh, I didn't know that. There's great trails there. And it might kind of like confuse your decision making. And then you forget, like, that's not even something that's important to you all. And now
Right.
you're thinking about this option because of that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so helpful. That's so helpful. So when you present this to your clients, what is the difference between you speaking to them before you walk them through the framework and then after? Is there just like this light bulb moment that usually happens?
Well, I mean, so I use that framework of the 3 components to first identify where are they stuck,
Okay.
right? Like, is it because there's something going on with objectives, or maybe they're not clear, or maybe the ones they have, and there might be another decision maker, right? Like, for some of these life
Mm-hmm.
decisions, maybe they have their own set of objectives, and then their spouse has a different one. They have to figure out a way to see, like, what
Right.
is really the core set. Is it that the options piece is giving them trouble, either because they have way too many, or they feel like they don't have enough, or they feel trapped?
Right.
Or is it the information piece? And so first we'll figure out where are they getting stuck, and then I might pull, like, another framework out of the bag, or really dig into what is going on. Like, where could they use more clarity? What is
Mm.
the one thing that we haven't talked about too is the feelings, the emotions that come up, because I am not here to only
Yes.
talk about the cognitive, because good decisions that make sense and feel right, we have to
Yeah.
also pay attention to the emotions that are present.
Yes. How do you help your clients clarify those feelings? Because sometimes and I'm talking from personal experience, sometimes I'll be feeling something, but I have a hard time really identifying, like, what is that feeling and where is it coming from? How do you help your
Mm,
clients clarify that?
yeah. And this is part of the reason why I do a lot of externalizing onto paper with my
Mm-hmm.
clients, because I think so often we can get so in our heads, and, like, all of the feelings and the thoughts are just swimming in there, and we're thinking in circles.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that I'll have a client do is a decision inventory, which
Mm.
is a semi-structured brainwriting exercise about all the
Mm-hmm.
things that they may be carrying when it comes to a decision. And then I'll have them sort it into those 3 components plus feelings. Are there certain
Mm-hmm.
emotions that are there?
Mm-hmm.
We might then jump into one of the other various frameworks I have, and as we work through it on paper, I'll also check in, like, how does that feel when you look at what's on the paper? And sometimes there might be something like, the paper says this, but my heart says something, and I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." Like, what's missing from the piece of paper? Or, like, what is that feeling about? based on what we may have already discussed, I might offer an idea out there. Is it this? Sometimes they'll say, yes, that's it. Or sometimes they say, no, it's more like
Mhm.
whatever it might be. Like, ooh, are you feeling a bit of, apprehension around what people might think? No, I think it's more that like, I want to be like the meest version of me. Like, okay, so
Mm.
there's something in the conversation or the externalization, even onto paper, that clients find useful for making the implicit more explicit
Yeah.
and sorting through something.
Oh, this is great because I'm seeing the connection between the ability to make decisions with clarity and without, much stress. I see that being connected to how well one knows oneself and how
Mhm.
well they're able to kind of like tune in and be present with whatever's going on,
Yeah.
and do your clients do you ever see like your clients, I guess, like resurrect past things that they may have buried or not have dealt with in their lives because of these types of exercises?
I mean, I think we sometimes what'll come up is because I want to go back to objectives, even though I said, oh, yes, it's about articulating what matters to you. It's a lot harder to do than me just
Yeah,
saying it, right? And
it
so sometimes
is.
we'll have to engage with, usually the feelings. When you're facing a decision with a couple different options, usually there are already some feelings about each option.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
instead of a pro con list, we'll do like attractive concerning. Okay, what's making you lean in or what makes like, this particular option attractive? Let's write that
Mm,
out, talk about that. Okay, now what's concerning? What makes you lean out or hesitate, gives you pause? Okay, let's just get all these things on the paper. Now what themes do we see? All right. Okay, so there's a theme around maybe stability and growth and
mm-hmm.
culture or whatever it may be, and what might people think. Okay, we see these themes. What are the ones that you want to drive your decision? And what's interesting is that
Mm,
sometimes, especially for some decisions where there might not even be concrete options yet, we might mine past decisions and how they felt about it to see, okay, like what are they seeing matters.
mm-hmm. Interesting. Interesting. And I think I'm also curious about what you see specifically with AAPI founders, in the Asian American community,
Mm.
founders, executives, professionals. Do you see any patterns or cultural influences or challenges that come up most often in that community's decision making?
I mean, one of the things that I'm often tuning into is what is the level of risk people are willing to
Mm,
take on, and also what even does that word mean for people?
risk.
Yeah, because
Hmm.
and this is again something that I find really interesting because risk ties back to objectives. And I'll even go back to my own path, right? So basically after business school, after getting a really fancy expensive degree, like a few years afterwards, I was telling my parents that I was going to be quitting my job to go out on my own. And I bet you can imagine what my
Parents.
parents' like, reaction
Red
was
flag.
like,
Yeah.
what is happening, right? But and even to this day, a lot of people will say, like, wow, you went out on your own. That seems like such a risky move. And one thing I'll say is that, like, I'm very risk averse, and I think I'm risk averse
Mm,
due to my upbringing, and it's a pattern
mhm,
that I've seen actually not just in the AAPI community, but in a lot of other communities of color or even
mhm.
just, children of immigrants. Because
I see that too.
oftentimes they come here and I think we were talking about, oh, what are the jobs that are usually put forth? Like, they're looking for stability, safety,
Yes.
right? And it's just kind of like, okay, what is safe? I still
Yes.
remember growing up all the time, my dad would, "Watch out, be careful, watch out, be careful, watch out, be careful." And so that has, like and I can even feel it in my nervous system, like this, like, ever-present vigilance,
Hmm.
and risk aversion.
Hmm.
And so I think I've seen a pattern of always, like, looking out, trying to be careful, looking out, like, trying to avoid the worst case scenario, And when it comes to decision making in the face of uncertainty, among the broader population, there's usually a couple different behaviors that exist. One is the minimize downside, that risk aversion. The other is maximize upside. You might
Mhm.
see this more in like folks who have sales roles. Like they're more
Mhm.
comfortable. There's uncertainty, but like they are comfortable with it as long as they're pursuing that upside.
Okay.
And so it's been really interesting to see how risk aversion may impact
Yeah.
decisions. And again, like for me, I feel like I was able to go the entrepreneurship path. One, because I scoped that test very concretely. It wasn't just like,
Yes.
I'm gonna go and then
But
that's it. It was just like, I'm gonna try this. Here's the
yeah.
experiment. Here
Yeah.
is the end point, and here's the data I am looking for that would permit me to persevere versus pivot and try something else.
Right.
And so that was a way of me mitigating risk. Also, risk is tied to our objectives. And so yes, like going out on my own, like entrepreneurship, it can be risky financially. And so I mitigated that by, like having concrete scope, but also I had to think about, that upside pursuing. Well, I didn't talk about this earlier, but one of the reasons that really pushed me to try entrepreneurship, because I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. That is never something that I dreamed about. I dreamt of that
Mm.
stable job, like stability and just like continue climbing and like just be good. But I always knew I wanted to be a mom. And I also knew that I wanted to be very present in my child, like in my babies' lives when they were ages 0 to 5, just because
Mhm.
of things that I had learned about early childhood development. And
Mhm.
after graduating from business school, and again, this is pre-pandemic, this is before remote work was
Yeah.
normalized or even available across the board. I remember after business school, I saw so many of my friends have these existential crises when they had their kids, and they felt like they had to choose, like be
Mhm.
present with their kids or continue in their career. But I knew I wanted both. I
Yeah.
wanted to be able to show up and do work that was impactful, that was using my skill set, and I wanted to be present with my babies. And I didn't
Mhm.
like the options that were in front of me, right? The obvious options, you know,
Yes.
quit my job and stay at home or work a full-time job away from home and not see my kids. And so
Yeah.
entrepreneurship was a way for me to explore another option
Right. That
because
makes so much sense.
I saw it as it may have been risky financially, but for me the bigger risk was to not to try to find another option where I could mother the way that I wanted to.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, especially during pre-COVID days, as you were mentioning, because the options were so limited back then.
Yeah.
And that's also what pushed me into fractional work because I do
Mhm.
fractional CMO work. And with my first child, gosh, I can still look back and be like, I missed so much because I was at the office, and now with my second child, I get to be at home with him. And my schedule is my schedule. So I get to control it,
Mhm.
and we'll never get that time back as moms
Yeah.
from 0 to 5. So it's so great that you're sharing this because I know that there's other moms out there who are listening to this. And I hope that you all are receiving that you can create your own options. It just takes knowing what objectives you have, like
Mhm.
Michelle was talking about.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I do also see that pattern of risk aversion in our community. For me, what came out of that was having this, what do you call that? Like having a backup plan
Mhm.
on almost
Absolutely.
on so many things that I do. Like if this doesn't work, then I'll do this.
Mhm.
And for me, that is helpful. And also sometimes it became a crutch because
Mm.
I noticed that I don't have 10 toes down on
Mm.
particular things because of that. Have you seen that before, or has that come across your work?
I mean, I can see that playing out again in that whole, what is the mindset that we're holding in the decision? Is it really just minimizing downside or trying to maximize upside? And again, like in especially like children of immigrant communities, I'm seeing a lot of the like, let me just minimize the downside. Let me have that backup plan versus, I have this framework called relief regret. And
Mm-hmm.
it's for when you're facing decisions that have to be made in the face of uncertainty, like where you don't know what the
Mm,
outcome is. And like I very intentionally push clients to articulate, well, what is the upside? Like, what does the future look like when you are so glad that you went with option one, 10 toes down?
mm-hmm.
Like, what does that? Because I think we can be so stuck in the, well, what would it look like if I regret this decision? What is that
Yeah,
downside? And like, oh
right.
yes, what should I be doing right now to try to mitigate against that? I think the other thing that I do is, okay, let's hang out in the upside for a bit.
Yeah.
And then yes, also think about like what does that future look like where you would regret taking that path. But also, if that were to happen, like that future, that regrettable future, what would you then do?
Mm,
And so, like, it is similar to the backup plan thing, but then we'll also talk about like when in the future would you actually activate that? Like, what is the threshold? So, not a
mm,
I'm in the boat and the lifeboat is here all the time and I'm like one foot in each type
yeah.
of thing, but really like I am deciding to be 10 toes down into this right now. And I will like I will set a tripwire for, and that's kind of like what I did with the entrepreneurship thing. I was just like, I'm giving
Got it.
myself a year. You get a year to like try this full out. And I will like evaluate what's happening at the end of that year. But until that year is done, I am doing this 10 toes down.
Oh, that's a lot more peaceful, right?
Yeah, because
Because
then you're
you,
not like back and forth. Oh yeah,
yeah,
for the
you're not
people
doing that
who are
shimmy.
just listening, we are just shimmying in
I
between the two
know.
options.
It can be stressful. I really like that. So identifying the threshold, right, of when to get that life jacket on as
Right.
opposed to always
Wearing it
having it
all,
on.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. What is that called again? You had a term for it.
The framework that I was starting to walk through is called relief regret.
Relief regret. Okay, that's so interesting. I love that. I wish these things were taught in school,
Me too.
which feels really wild that it's not because it affects our lives like every single day.
Right.
What gaps does that create, especially for leaders navigating like our fast changing environment nowadays?
Mhm. I mean, like, if the question is, what is it costing us to not
Yes, what
have
is it costing us?
decision education broadly available? I mean, I think one, there's the individual level, especially within organizations, just the individual, what is the level of stress that people are carrying around because it's hard to make decisions. I
Mm-hmm.
work with leaders as they are continuing to ascend, and high performing leaders always have more and more to do, more and more
More and
scope,
more.
more and more decisions. And so, like, as their scope and responsibility and decision making increases, the amount of drag that each decision has is amplified. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why, like, I love just the multiplier effect of, oh, when I'm able to teach a course inside a company, teach a workshop, equip people with tools, like they're able to use these tools across all of their decisions that they're making, as opposed to coaching them around just
Mm,
one. That's part of the reason why I love teaching. And then there's the impact on their teams, right? Again, in order to reduce their cognitive load, they need to be able to delegate. But then there's the, do I trust my people to make these decisions? How do I teach these
yeah.
people to make decisions if I cannot
Yeah.
articulate a process through which I actually make decisions?
Right.
Right. And so if they have a process, then that is something that they can teach their team, that they can coach their team through, and they can build the capacity of their team. And sometimes
Mm,
their team or the people kind of like further down throughout like their org may be the people who are closer to the relevant information anyway.
yeah.
So there's a lot more speed and velocity in decision making as opposed to it like the information needing to bubble all the way up and then like go back down,
Right. Takes
right?
so long.
Yeah,
A
so
lot of,
you can like I think there's a lot of drag within organizations, both on individuals and then organizationally, when people aren't equipped with the right tools to make
Right.
decisions.
And I'm also seeing this when applied to your personal life, like families,
Mhm.
right? How not equipping our kids with this type of framework can potentially decrease their confidence
Mm,
or
mhm.
their weaken their intuition because they're not really knowing how to make the best decisions for themselves.
Right.
So
And
how
it's
do
a
you
muscle, right? Like, the
yes,
earlier that we can be developing this muscle, the better, and
yes.
that's what I love about this discipline, like, all of these frameworks that I teach, they can be applied to professional decisions and personal decisions, and usually, especially if we're talking about young people, they have a whole lot more personal decisions that they can
Yeah.
make and practice on, right, before
Practice
they get to
on.
be leaders and in positions of power.
Yes, because the consequences, if negative, right, with
Mhm.
their decisions are a lot smaller when
Right.
they're young.
Yeah.
So it's great. How do you apply it to your kids?
So I one of my kids is very rigid in his thinking, and so for him, it's a lot of encouraging him to explore the options. Oftentimes, he'll trap
Mm,
himself in a box of like, "Oh, like, I should just do this because, like, someone might react in this like, this way, or I don't wanna be a burden on people," or and I'm just like, "Well, no one said you had to do that. Like, what is it that you want?" And so, like, just getting
mm.
him in the practice of articulating what he wants. His sister has no problem articulating what she wants, but she's very she's we call her mini CEO. She's very good at articulating what she wants, how she wants it, by whom, when. But with my son, it's like, "Well, what is it that you want? What does your voice of desire say?" "Okay,
Mm,
well, what might be some options?" Like, some options, not necessarily the one you're gonna pick right now, but let's just be in the
right,
brainstorming mode of what are possible paths that you might take? What are possible ways? Oh, okay, you want to be able to see your friend during Thanksgiving break. Okay.
right.
But you're, like, boxing yourself into, like, "Oh, I can't see my friends because it's not working out that day." Well, what might be other options? Like, "Oh,
Mhm.
Mikey wants to go to the park, maybe you meet at the park." Oh, like, maybe we can text them and see, do the parents need prep time for Thanksgiving or whatever? We're not
Right.
doing big plans, so, like, and so I think just getting him especially in the practice of tuning in to, like, what does he want, right?
Mhm.
Regardless of what he thinks he should do. My son's my firstborn, so there's a lot of, like, "Well, I know what I should be doing," but
Yes.
I'm like, "But what do you want?" And he's just like, "I shouldn't eat candy." I'm like, "But it's Halloween. Don't you want the
Oh my
candy?"
goodness.
Right?
He's like a mini adult already.
Um,
How old is he?
he's 9.
Oh, my daughter's 10, so they're pretty close in age.
Yeah.
And she's my first too. But my daughter is more like your daughter. Like she knows exactly what she wants. And she's very clear about like how to do it and like when and I'm like that's really
Yeah.
cool. Like I admire that about you. You're
Yes, and
so clear
so
with what
clear.
it is that you're desiring
Right.
because I'm the complete opposite. I'm still exercising that muscle.
Mm,
And I think it has a lot to do with like how I was raised, like you were
yeah,
saying, child of immigrants. My parents are very risk averse, very much making decisions more from a fear-based standpoint, and this is
right.
not to knock my parents at all. This is just what their
It was
circumstances
yeah,
were, and
right? It was
yeah,
survival. You need to,
it's
like,
survival.
figure out how to make your way in a new country where things
Exactly.
exist in ways that are not familiar with how things
Exactly.
existed where they came from.
Yeah, exactly. And I was talking to my mom's about this sort of when I was telling her, like, Mom, you grew up with 9 siblings in the Philippines, right? And then you came here to the US and you have 3 kids. But then you're still operating like you had 9 siblings, like your options were so limited or your resources were so limited. Like you
Mm,
never really took yourself out of that environment. So it makes sense, like,
mhm,
why you, I guess, like, did what you did or raised us the way you raised us, because there was never really that transition period, I guess, into her
mhm,
subconscious. Like, I'm at a new place, right? Like,
right.
There's new
There are
opportunities
different
here,
options. And that's the
more
thing, when it
options.
comes to those three objectives, options, information, whenever any of them change, it's a new opportunity to make a new decision.
Yeah, new opportunity.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so important to check in with yourself,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah.
being present, because how you're making decisions like a year from now is going to be different from how you're making the decision now, right
Right.
now,
Yeah.
because of those three factors. Michelle, from the hundreds of leaders you've coached, what's one common place where people tend to get stuck? Is it usually the objectives? Is it usually like which one?
I
Which one?
I wouldn't say it's a particular component. I'd say it's more of a mindset. And so I coach a lot
Hmm.
of high achievers,
Yes.
and I don't know if you've heard of the difference between maximizer mindset and satisficer mindset.
No, tell me.
So this was talked about a bit in like my mentor's book, Paradox of Choice. It was popularized, or Paradox of Choice is written by Barry Schwartz. That book is all about how more choices does not actually make us more happy. But he also talks about maximizer versus satisficer, which was popularized by another psychologist. I forget his name. But basically, the premise is, and I see this a lot in high achievers, when it comes to decision making, like they could be faced with all good options, like my mentee who's choosing between Stanford, Harvard, and Yale,
Gosh.
right?
Yeah.
They're all good options. She cannot go wrong. But she was so worked up and just like in a gridlock because she had this maximizer mindset. She was focused on, I need to make the best decision. And in her head, that meant
Mm.
like, I need to go for the best option. Sometimes this also manifests as the fear of something better. Oh my gosh, what if I choose this
Ah.
thing and maybe it's fine and it's good, but there was this other thing that could have been better?
Ah.
But that's a trap because we can never know. One, like we can't, travel into parallel dimension where we chose that other thing to see. And so maximizer mindset can be very sexy because we live in this culture of more, best, right? Optimization, right? Maximization. But really, the path to happiness and satisfaction with our decisions is this satisficer mindset, which is all
Mm.
about knowing what is good enough. Or like when it comes to the objectives piece, right? What does it look like to satisfy my objective?
Mm.
And the thing is, if you can't name, like, what does that threshold look like? Like, oh, okay, work life balance. What does that mean? And like, actually be specific about it. Oh, I want to be able to. I want to be able to have enough flexibility in my schedule so that if something were to happen to the health of any of my loved ones, it would be a no-brainer. I could like when my dad had an eye stroke, I was able to drop everything and like show up for him because it was
Mm.
my schedule, my business. And so like we really have to be able to articulate, what does it look like to satisfy this objective? Because if we can't name that, we will never be satisfied.
Mhm.
We'll always be chasing something else and
Yes.
something more, finger
Oh,
quotes.
oh wow. Yes. I wow. Okay. That's great. It reminds me of KPIs, right? Like setting a clear goal,
Mhm.
and then
And if you meet it, great.
great. You know exactly what success looks like.
Right.
That is so helpful. And also, it doesn't feel good always like trying to maximize everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, because we're
Very
always going to be,
exhausting.
it's exhausting. It's exhausting. It's human nature to want to expand. But
Mhm.
then you also want to do it in a way that's not going to burn you out. So
Right.
I love that. Michelle, you offer coaching, workshops, and resources through your business powered by decisions, right?
Mhm.
What type of support do you currently offer, and where can listeners find you if they want to get deeper into this work?
Yeah. So they can find me at poweredbydecisions.com because, life is powered by decisions, success is powered by decisions,
Love
work is
it.
all those things. And right now, I'm really focused on teaching groups. And so,
Ooh.
if anyone has an organization that wants to bring me in to lead a workshop on decision making, whether that's a company, or I also work with like professional or trade organizations, or people who are holding events, or do like leadership development programs. I also occasionally, actually, right now, I do have space in my schedule and I'm taking on, especially because sometimes at the end of the year, people have big decisions they're making or thinking about. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't do it often, but I have opened up space in my calendar to do one-on-one, like just in time decision coaching for
Mm.
professionals. And I also have a self-paced course for if you ever need to make a decision on a deadline and it takes no more it's about 2 hours worth of content. I've had people go through it, make a decision, like, over the weekend and have clarity around it and feel good about that. And so that's another option for support if people want to exercise it.
I love that. There's group, there's one-on-one, and then there's courses that you offer.
Yeah.
So timely and something that different people from different walks of life can benefit from. Are your ads costing more than they're bringing in? Are influencers posting about your brand but not driving sales? Are your emails going out but no one's clicking or buying? If that sounds familiar, your business doesn't need more marketing. It needs a sharper message and a smarter strategy. Hi, I'm Mary Moses, fractional CMO for hospitality, retail, and beauty brands. For over a decade, I've led marketing for national restaurant chains and e-commerce brands, helping founders grow by creating a clear, impactful message that aligns with who tells it, where it's told, and who it's told to. Because when your message, messengers, and communication channels are in sync, marketing stops being noise and starts driving profit. This month, I'm offering 5 founders a complimentary 20-minute brand growth reset audit. In this call, we'll do 3 things. 1, identify what actually drove results for you in 2025. 2, uncover the gaps limiting retention and profitability. And 3, define the 2 to 3 strategic moves that will position your brand to grow faster next year. To sign up, just go to tastydirectives.com. Now remember, there's only 5 spots, so if I were you, I would pause this real quick and just sign up right now. Again, that's tastydirectives.com. It's so cool how you were talking about working with groups and in organizations because I do marketing work, fractional CMO work. And this can be so helpful when dealing with clients, talking about their brand,
Mhm.
talking about their ideal client. And sometimes they struggle with their story when it comes to storytelling, right? And I think having someone like you can really help them just get clear on what that is for themselves, for their brand. So maybe there's something fun that we can do together on that with a type of group workshop activity. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that later. Michelle, is there anything that we didn't get to that you want to leave our audiences with?
Yeah. And I think it's related to the entire reason why I'm so passionate about this work around decision making, right? I think especially if there are people in the audience who, have parents who are immigrants, I feel like their decisions were very constrained because they just they came here, at least when I think about my parents, they came here and they had to just make do with what was in front of them. And as someone who is benefiting from all of the work that they put in, I feel like I have a lot more leeway to make intentional decisions to create the life that I want. But we only get to do that if we take the opportunity to make intentional decisions, right? And I find that sometimes people find decision making so overwhelming that they will just opt out and not decide. And so if I want to leave people with anything, it's, we were given this gift of choice and I hope that you'll take it. I hope that you'll look for those opportunities. I had a mentor who talked about the difference between decision problems, where like, oh, I have to make a decision because like this thing happened and now I need to decide, which is fine, but also decision opportunities. Like when we are clearer about what we want and what we desire, we can proactively look for choice. What are those opportunities where we can make decisions to bring forth that life that we want?
Beautiful. What comes up for me is being able to make decisions is a privilege.
Mhm.
And it's something that we can look at as something to be grateful for versus a burden.
Yeah.
That's a great way to end things. Thank you so much, Michelle, for your time and for chatting with me today. I
Yeah.
know that this is going to bring a lot of our audiences so much support and guidance on how to make decisions that are more aligned with their core. Michelle's information will be available in the show notes. And make sure that you check out all of her information. And we'll see you next time. Bye,
Yeah.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
If you like this episode, consider subscribing, sharing, and leaving a rating and review. Tradition Breakers is produced by Tasty Sounds, and the theme music is by DJ Professor Moses.